Thank you, Senator Erickson, Representative Vitale. I'm very pleased to be here with my colleague from the House, Representative Harper, who's worked closely with me on a lot of these issues, and point out, of course, that it is a bipartisan effort because the future of Pennsylvania and its electric power provision is really a bipartisan issue that we all need to deal with. And I'm happy to have Acting Secretary Hanger, who has worked very hard on a lot of the details, working on creation of the original Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard in his previous job with the Future. And I look forward to working with him again as we move forward. What's happened in the last few years since the original Alternative Energy Portfolio Standards have taken place is basically that we have seen a proliferation of renewable portfolio standards across the country in many states. And as is often the case, people constantly are trying to outdo each other. So there have been some very dramatic moves in some of our neighboring states and other states around the country. And it is a competitive environment when people are attempting to determine where they're going to locate jobs, where they're going to create factories, and where the funds that are out there ready to be invested in alternative energy projects are going to be placed. And some of our neighbors have basically been very aggressive in this regard. And we now need to go back, review where we were with the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standards, and look forward to the future. So I'm going to talk briefly about four areas that we have suggested changes in the legislation, which will be House Bill 80 in the House, Senate Bill 92 in the Senate. First, the Tier 1 requirements. These are the cleanest energy requirements. We're looking to increase those requirements from 8% to 20% between the years 2021 and 2026. Now that sounds like a long way away, and many of you are perhaps wondering why we're looking so far into the future. But when you consider how long it takes to create a plant and also how long it takes to recover the cost of the initial investment in a facility, it's absolutely necessary that we give a strong signal to the marketplace that not only are we serious about these, but that they will have an extended opportunity over time to recover their investments, and that we're going to give them some level of certainty in the government in terms of where they might wind up in the future. We are keeping the Tier 1 requirements between now and 2021 unchanged. Secondly, in solar voltaics, we're increasing the solar voltaic requirements, the carve-out in Tier 1, from 0.5% to 3% between 2021 and 2026. Again, in this area, New Jersey in particular have been very aggressive in solar photovoltaics. We need to stimulate the marketplace and again have those out years give a strong signal that we're going to be a good place to create solar and also to recover the investments. Third, we are looking to create an area called advanced coal combustion with limited carbon emissions. And in that area, we're looking to have a 3% of the total electricity sold starting in 2014 to come from advanced coal combustion with limited carbon facilities. For a plant to qualify, it must capture carbon, and there's a series of 20 to 90% over the 3 to 10 year and thereafter targets that we'll be looking for carbon capture. Let me talk briefly about this because this is new. We have from the very beginning recognized as Pennsylvania is a coal mining and coal producing state, as well as many of our power plants are reliant on coal, that we need to address coal. And it's part of our heritage, it's part of our existing infrastructure, and although we're developing alternatives, we want to make sure that we think thoughtfully and carefully about what we do with coal in this state. And in this area, we're looking to stimulate the cleanest possible coal burning, which is a change for some of the plants that they're going to have to reduce their emissions and actually operate in a much cleaner way. But then in addition to that, we're setting up a system whereby we can create carbon sequestration to take the slack up for some of the greenhouse gases that coal produces, up to ideally 90% capture, so that we're getting much more carbon neutral in the total amount of emissions that we have in the state. We will have coal electric generation in the state. The question is, will we make it as clean as possible, and will we offset as best we can with the technologies that are available the carbon emissions that are going to occur? It's important for us to get out ahead of the curve on this. I think most of us recognize that at the federal level we're likely to have some form of carbon legislation, probably a cap and trade. And so we're trying today to get ourselves positioned correctly for the time when those kinds of constraints are going to happen. Fourthly, and this is perhaps the most interesting piece of this, we're here in the legislation attempting to authorize and stimulate a carbon dioxide sequestration network. In other words, the place where we will be able to offset and take that carbon so that it's no longer being simply emitted into the atmosphere. The state of Pennsylvania shall develop, own, and operate a carbon dioxide sequestration network. The state shall charge fees to cover the cost. The network shall be only for carbon captured within the state, so this is going to be something that's going to be explicitly designed to address our emissions here in Pennsylvania. And we're going to go through the process of assessing the risk, making sure that this is done safely, and protect the liability and also create some immunity so that we can make sure that we create this in a safe and thoughtful way. So this is literally taking the carbon that would otherwise be emitted into the atmosphere and finding underground sequestration storage capacity for it. So those are the broad outlines. Obviously, we're in the midst of working the final details of the legislation out, some of the back and forth with the Legislative Reference Bureau.